Hello, brothers and sisters. Welcome back to our study of Proverbs and laziness, actually. That's what we were looking at last time. I want to continue down this path and see its counterbalance, diligence. And it's interesting to note that most of the Proverbs, of the sayings that I found that speak of diligence, of hard work, will be counterbalanced with laziness. So that's interesting in and of itself. It's one thing I want to take note of. We're still on the laziness mode, so we'll look at certain of these verses that focuses only on laziness, but still we'll be counterbalancing all of this with hard work. We're going to take note of things that are being said, even though there's a lot of repetition. To the point, even some of the sayings are word for word the same thing from one chapter to another. So there's just the ideas are there. But in that repetition, there's little differences, little nuances that we want to take note, put in our pocket, and then pull them all out and try to learn something from these sayings. So we begin in a chronological order with chapter 10, and then we'll move on from there. It starts by saying, a slack hand causes poverty, but the hand of the diligent makes rich. We have said that slack is laziness, is the same kind of idea. Similar words are being used. And the one thing I do want to point to is this word hand. It's actually palm in the Hebrew. There's a difference in what you're reading. And I don't think you need to find deep meanings of the palm compared to the hand. But it does show that the author's trying to make things different. Different between the slack palm and the working hand. Right? There's supposed to be a difference for us between who they are, how they live, and of course, what happens to them. One gets poverty, and the other one gets riches. We know they're sayings. These are not absolutes, and we gotta remember that. But still, we see that there are consequences or rewards between laziness and diligence. And like I said, there's an effort to really show how different these two are. Those are two things we're taking note of, putting in our pocket. And the third being, of course, the use of the body, right? The palm and the hand. We're going to see more body parts as we move along. So let's look at the next one. He who gathers in summer is a prudent son, but he who sleeps in harvest is a son who brings shame. So again, there's hard work and there's slackness. Now the difference is that the consequences will be for somebody else. Because on one side, yes, the son, he will be considered a prudent son. So that means the father will be, in a sense, honored for having a prudent son. That's why it's mentioned in this way, prudent son. The same way it's counterbalanced by the fact that the son will be shamed. The consequences for this lazy or diligent person will be for other people. And we saw a lot of how the lazy person will bring great consequences to himself, but others are also impacted by our sin or our faithfulness, as we see here. And again, there's this interesting, missing counterbalance between the son that works and the one who doesn't, who rather sleep instead of be diligent. And we don't forget that sleep part, right? We've seen it before, how the lazy person just likes to turn around in its bed. We also see a bit of that exaggeration and silliness of the lazy person. Because here he is sleeping in the harvest, but it doesn't mean he wasn't planting before though. So it's a bit like maybe he did some of the work, but when it came time to actually getting the food, it was too hard. It took me too long to sow everything, to water everything. I just give up now. You're the last part of the race, and that's when you give up. It's kind of how the lazy person works, right? I've already worked hard enough, now I give up. You don't go all the way through compared to the other one. Diligent person will go all the way through compared to a lazy person. But like I said, there's consequences for others around them, and that's when we'll look at the next one too. This one will have nothing about diligence, but it will just say, like vinegar to the teeth and smoke to the eyes, so is the sluggard to those who send him. I just want to focus on the sluggard, this lazy person, and the impact on others. Vinegar was very bitter back then. It really could bother the teeth, just like smoke in the eyes, like somebody blowing a cigarette smoke right in your face. It's very annoying, very frustrating. That's what a lazy person will do. It will not just bring harm to himself, but it will really horribly impact others who count on him. I just want to focus on that consequence for others' part. And like I just focused on one here, the lazy person, now I want to focus on the other person, the diligent, actually. Yeah, we can read this. From the fruit of his mouth, a man is satisfied with good, and the work of a man's hand comes back to him. So this is only about the diligent. So both sides, instead of comparing, contrasting, like all the other ones will and did, it's just focusing on the diligent person, on the hardworking person, and the two ways he can bless himself. The fruit of his mouth, maybe he's a salesperson or something like that, right? The way he speaks will help him complete his contracts, his deals, compared to the one who works with his hands. But both will have rewards, right? Good. Will come back to him. It's not even clear anymore. It's just there will be reward. And please don't miss, like we've said before, right? The hands and now the mouth are also involved in this diligent person's effort to work. So we've seen what the lazy person will do to others. We've seen how much the diligent person will bless himself. So now we come back to contrasting both of them. The hand of the diligent will rule, while the slothful will be put to forced labor. Again, exaggeration, no absolutes here. Not because you work hard, automatically you become some kind of president or something. But there's a sense when you counterbalance with the other one. The lazy person is the one who won't work. If you don't work, you won't make money. You don't make money, you can't pay your bills. And then you have to sell yourself. In that kind of culture, you can do that. You have to sell yourself as a servant to pay off your debts. So you didn't want to work, now you have to work to pay off your debt. You will be in forced labor instead. Because the creditor will say, you need to pay, or I'm putting you in jail, so you gotta do that or work for me. But again, it's all about the counterbalance between one and the other, the contrast, and how there's always a consequence or reward that goes with it. And we continue. Whoever is slothful will not roast his game, but the diligent man will get precious wealth. This is more of a silly exaggeration, I would say. Because you think of this slothful, lazy person, goes out on the hunt, kills the animal, and then just lays down and says, I have to roast it too? I give up. I have to cook the food now? Oi! It was hard enough just chasing after it. How exaggerated, right? Like putting his hand in the bowl and not bringing it up because it's just too much work. It's exaggerated how much the lazy person will ruin his own life. Well, I think the same thing is going on here. Now, in the ESV, it talks about the fact that he'll get precious wealth, but the Hebrew is more fluid than that. It's more complicated. So in the NASB and other translations, it actually says how the diligence itself is his precious reward. It says something like how preciousness of diligence for the man who works hard. So it's itself the reward. Like the lazy person is making himself suffer, the diligent person is blessing himself. So again, it's not even about the stuff, it's about how it's its own reward or consequences. One you'll starve to death, the other you will be blessed because you are a hard worker. Again, not focusing too much on the stuff you'll get. We continue. The soul of the sluggard craves and gets nothing, while the soul of the diligent is richly supplied. So we went from the physical bodies to the inner man, right? The soul. So the desires. And we've seen before how the desire of the sluggard never gets fulfilled because he won't get up to do it. So he gets nothing. Now the contrary is that the soul of the diligent is one who doesn't just want and desire, but he'll go out and get it too. He has wants and desires like the lazy person, but the difference is he'll do it. And so that's why he'll be richly supplied. So that's the difference. So from the inner man that's active or not active, we now go to the really exterior part, where it says this: the way of a sluggard is like a hedge of thorns, but the path of the upright is a level highway. We've seen how the lazy person has a way of thinking, a mindset that sees obstacles everywhere, even when there's none. And there's a lion in the street. It might attack me. It might be one, so I won't go out to work. I think that's what he's going to add to. Because the fact is, we all have difficulties in our lives, even the upright, right? But the lazy person will invent obstacles, and when he sees a real one, he'll make it worse than they are. So that's why everything for him will seem like a hedge of thorns. Because he's always finding excuses to get out of it, and because when something really difficult comes, he won't put the effort into it. Compared to the upright. And that's interesting, right? From lazy to upright, instead of lazy and diligent. Because it's all connected together. That's an important thing to know for now too. That's another thing we put in our pocket. The reality that all these faithful, obedient way of life, being diligent, is all connected together with being upright as well. It's all about being faithful to wisdom and God's command. For this person, there'll be obstacles, but he'll persevere through them. He'll surmount them. He'll grow from them. So in a sense, it's all level for him. So not literally, lazy person will also have difficulties, and the upright never. It's how they will deal with it. Because you're your own worst enemy, just like before, right? The soul. One who just wants and doesn't do and once and then does it. Completely different. You're your own worst enemy, or your own greatest hero, in a sense. Now we continue. And read, love not sleep, lest you come to poverty. Open your eyes, and you will have plenty of bread. Yeah, we know there's an exaggeration. It's not literal. You don't just become poor. You don't just get all the bread you want. But still, we don't miss this love of sleep, right? That's the lazy person who was crossing his arms and finding reasons to rest and turning in his bed and then falling to deep sleep, which will just ruin your life. But instead, you open your eyes. Again, another body part. You open your eyes in a sense of you go up, you go out, you do. It's just that's the contrast we're supposed to make here. It's not just open your eyes and then close them again. You get out there. And they will go out there. And again, it's not a promise you'll always get stuff, but diligence will have rewards. You might not get what you want, but there will always be a certain reward in that hard work, even if diligence itself is the reward sometimes. We continue. The plan of the diligent leads surely to abundance, but everyone who is hasty comes only to poverty. Here's where we see again the notion that it's not just saying lazy this, diligent that. He's first showing that this diligent person, again, will surely have that abundance, will surely have that reward, will surely have the success somehow, something will be there for his plans. But then you have that hasty attitude. That's not lazy, no, but it's connected together. Just like diligence and uprightness was, sins or deeds of the flesh also connected together. See, if you're hasty, it's because you want to get it done as quick as possible, because you want to get back to sleeping as quick as possible. Right? It's all kind of interconnected. The lazy person wants the quickest way out of something. So be hasty to try to do something, and that will never work. Just like we saw before, that last time, when it's time to plow, he doesn't do it. And he's still hoping that when it's time to plant the seeds, it still works even though he didn't plow the ground first. Doing the strictest minimum thing, still hoping to get something out of it. That's hastiness connected to laziness. Now this brings us to the last two in chapter 28. Two verses that go one after the other. And first says this: whoever works his hand will have plenty of bread, but he who follows worthless pursuits will have plenty of poverty. Again, there will be a reward for your perseverance and your hard work. The same way there will be consequences. Well, it's not lazy here, but still worthless pursuits. Things that are useless, like playing video games and watching movies all weekend long, which I used to do actually a lot. There's nothing comes out of it. It is those who are faithful at being in the Word and in prayer and in serving that will grow and mature in sanctification. But the one who's always seeking after useless worldly things and hoping he'll be spiritual through that, yeah, well, you're going to get poverty, spiritual poverty. Because again, there's always a reward, there's always a consequences for the way we behave. And here's where we end. A faithful man will abound with blessings, but whoever hastens to be rich will not go unpunished. Nowhere does it speak of diligence or laziness. Still, it is connected. Because the faithful man is the upright man, is the diligent man who's always abounding, always working hard, and is blessed for it. But the person who's hastened to be rich, trying to get rich quick, trying to get as little done as possible and still get as many rewards as possible, will end up unpunished. Unpunished. Will not be unpunished. Interesting, because we've seen before just consequences, you're hurting yourself, but here's the sense where somebody else will be hurting you. Probably God in His sovereignty, I don't know. But it's interesting, right? That we end on that note. This is the way Proverbs ends his discussion on laziness and diligence. By saying those efforts to be quick, rich, will end up ruining yourself, and even worse, even hurting yourself through punishment. That's how much God is against it. So that's why we empty up all our pockets. And we see first of all, that there really is a contrast between the two. There's no middle grounds. Bible doesn't know middle grounds, gray zones. You are either diligent, working hard. Yes, there's rest in that. Sabbath rest. Of course there is. There is normal, appropriate rest, but there is always a diligent effort. If there's something to be done, you do it. Compared to do laziness, or you're just finding excuses not to do, or finding ways to do it as little as possible. It's always going to be one or the other. The mindset, the attitude. Which brings us to the second point. It's all interconnected. Diligent is connected to uprightness. That's connected to being a faithful person, obedient to God, because all these fruit of the Spirit, if you will, all these Christ-like characteristics, all interconnected. They go together. Same thing. Laziness will bring forth hastiness and trying to get quick, rich, and all these other things are all interconnected. Sins go together and will just ruin you. You let yourself go in laziness, there'll be other parts that'll go with it too. In your laziness, you might fall into other sexual sins because you're going places you shouldn't be going, and so forth and so on. And again, there's always some rewards. May not be what you want, but there'll be a reward. There'll be a consequence. It might be as bad as you think, but there's consequences to this laziness, this carnality, this giving over to the flesh. There's always something that will happen. We've seen that. So this is what we've been learning from looking at laziness and diligence and its counterbalance, and its need to be putting all the efforts into it and to take these words seriously. I hope this has spoken to you. I encourage you to go back to the book of Proverbs and think these things over quite carefully. On that note, be blessed.